people say Strickland's not elite at anything, and yet look at what he's achieving. Two-time champion. Like, you can win a title one time, and I wouldn't call it fluky, but it's possible. But to come back around and get it a second time, nah, you're good. You're really, really good.
Right.
Sean Strickland is elite. Maybe one of the best, if not the best, I've ever seen at building a game. It seems to me more designed than anything else to simply nullify opponent weakness. Like, for example, people will say things like, wow, what really makes Sean's run kind of special, and they're right, is that, hey, look, on the one hand, he was a huge underdog, and he beat one of the greatest strikers the division has ever seen in Israel Adesanya. And then on the other side, he beats maybe the best wrestler the division has ever seen. How is something like that possible? Because his game is predicated on whatever you're good at, I'm going to have a set of defensive conditions that just pull that back down to earth. And then we're going to fight trench warfare. And that's why this fight was still kind of close, Chuck. I mean, that's what the real strength of, in my opinion, now I've seen it multiple times, the real strength of Sean Strickland is this ability to absolutely show resilient, very, very tricky defense through all phases of it. And it doesn't necessarily make his offense overpowering, although it certainly wasn't the Fluffy Hernandez fight. But what it does do is it then forces the opponent onto offensive terms that tend to favor Sean over time. This kind of you lob, I lob, you jab, I jab. He tends to be pretty good at that as a way of winning. Not all the time, it gets close. But that is such an you would never plan a game, Chuck. You were teaching a guy to fight. You would never be like, here's what we're going to do. We're going to make your defense insane, like in every way. And then we're going to give you a jab and a teep. Like, you would never plan around that. Right. But he's done that. And it turns out that is like, it is so difficult to deal with that he can take a title twice off of two guys who were supposed to have, and in one case did, legendary runs in the division.
I can remember talking to Eric Nixick too, and him saying something along the lines of, guys don't prefer to come in and train defensive wrestling, right? They just don't want to do it. He was talking about Francis Ngannou, but he had mentioned Sean Strickland as being one of those guys who didn't mind this, who would go in there and, in training and work through scenarios or work hard at scenarios to do exactly what you're saying, which is basically the nullification of strength is absolutely right. I hadn't really thought of it in terms of, like you're mentioning, beating an excellent, like, Sublime type striker in Izzy the way he did. And then in this fight, I wonder, like, in that first round, is it strategic? Like, the way the commentators, and we talked to Ray, we talked about this all week in general, like, it's inevitable you're going to be taken down. He didn't necessarily just bounce back up, but he scooted over to the fence. He like you said, he was very squirmy. He was very squirmy, right? Like, he was very squirmy. He made Chimaev work. There was a couple of submission attempts in that round. He had his back. Chimaev had his back for a good portion of that round. It looked like he was trying to get the finish, unlike the DDP that fight. So there was some elements there. I think it was Long Island Luke that was pointing out that there was no significant strikes line, or maybe this was you in that first round, and you're like, that's crazy. There was no significant strikes. But was it strategic to just say, like, let's survive the first round? Let's just not we know what he's going to do. Let's survive the first round, and like second round, let's go to work. Do you think that was their plan?
I think the plan was probably survive as long as you need to. I mean, the fact that Hamzat gassed in round two,
that was the surprise.
It was a huge surprise. I mean, we'll talk about that in just a minute, but, like, just what I mean about Sean, dude. Like, this fucking guy's clever, man. He's real clever. So one thing I feel like I saw a little bit of discussion about it, and I went back and I watched, and there's something I kind of noticed on real time, but it kind of crystallized upon further review. One thing to pay attention to that Sean does is, do they know Strickland's game, and they have good answers for it, like thoughtful answers. So, for example, like Sean's, this is not new. As you mentioned, he'll get taken down, and what's he doing? He's immediately going to the fence, whereas a guy like DDP, if he got taken down off the fence, would just kind of turn underneath and accept it. So first of all, he doesn't accept it. Then he's very good at using it, not giving up his back, blah, 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 all that stuff, building height off hands and elbows and everything else. But the part that's interesting is, go back and watch the first round. Every time Strickland gets his back taken, and that's when I say back taken, I mean both hooks in. Not one hook, but both. he immediately gives up what he's doing and then lets himself get taken to the ground, or even like elects to go, where he's basically laying on top of Chimaev. And it has this incredible effect. It turns Chimaev in those instances into nothing. He can't get ground and pound going. He can't get subs going. And what he eventually ends up doing every single time is just turning Strickland to a side and then trying to re-attack the position. And a couple of those times, Strickland's able to kind of get up after the fact. Like, they just knew when he puts both hooks in, fall to a side, fall to your back, literally lay on this guy, and it becomes a completely different fight. Like, they saw that in the tape, to say nothing of all of the other defensive lines. Like, dude, this guy's eye, and his team too, a team deserves credit, but that guy's eye and the team's eye for real subtle conditions that have to be established to nullify someone's offense, I should say, that they might be the best in MMA at that shit. It's insane how good they are at that. That's kind of what I saw.
Yeah, no, 100%. You mentioned the ground and pound, man.
Gone.
Where is that? Where is that from Chimaev, though? Like, I mean, this is one of those things. I know that we're like, I don't mean to like jump to the Chimaev end of it, but in that first round, I rewatched it this morning. Where was the ground and pound? Like, you know, he had him in positions where if he just starts hammer fisting him, maybe he opens up more, you know, avenues for the offense. But it's just like he's so mono-focused on kind of, you know, working towards a submission, or like, you know, going into more of a dominant position, that he's not using all of his weapons. Did it strike you that way? Because there's a little bit of a frustration, I think, if you were his coaches. I saw this in the DDP too, the little baby punches he was throwing. He wasn't doing much, but where's the ground and pound with this guy? Wouldn't that round out his game to another level?
I think that there's a bigger issue that this fight and many others, this is not the only one, but this fight certainly underscores or reveals, which is that we might be entering a phase, and this is not going to be true universally, but it might be true for like select fighters at the top for sure. We might be entering a phase where guys have gotten so good at getting up that the most styles of ground and pound won't work anymore.
Right.
That's actually a real thing. That was especially true in this one. I'm not saying there weren't instances where Chimaev couldn't have done something, but it absolutely would have come at the cost of maintaining control. And so if the goal is to maintain control no matter what, then you're just going to be in a place where ground and pound isn't nearly as possible. I mean, this is I honestly think, again, there's going to be guys on regional cards or, you know, low-level UFC, and even, you know, occasional high-level UFC as well. But I think there's a time coming where we're going to see people make ground and pound, certain select guys make ground and pound kind of impossible. And if your game isn't well-rounded enough to move to the second order of things, you're going to have some trouble.
Yeah, I thought he had some moments where he could have, but at the same time, like, when did it occur to you, I guess? You know, you're watching this fight, you see the first round. I think that the first round was kind of emblematic of how, you know, I think a lot of us thought it might go. There was resistance. He didn't accept the terms, like you mentioned, Strickland, but like at the same time, he was fighting off submissions. He's on his back. But in that second round, is this when it like occurs to you, like, okay, wait a minute, this isn't going to be a typical Chimaev fight? And was it at that moment, I guess, that you were like, Strickland can win this fight?
Bro, I thought Strickland might have. I thought Strickland was about to stop him in the second. I mean,
me
that
too.
was bad.
Me too, man.
And remember how it got set up. Remember, Chimaev shoots on him and can't actually get the takedown. Like, the takedown is stuffed so hard that Chimaev is knocked to his rear end. He's sitting down.
Right.
And then because of that, he chooses to scoot underneath and, you know, and get double unders or
Right,
whatever he had. But like, he actually, like, he got out muscled in the takedown. I was like, and then, you know, okay, it's one thing to be like, all right, I'm gonna aggressively scoot underneath, you know, because I'm gonna start setting up my getting up. Like, I'm gonna make this an active position from which to work, right? But he doesn't. He just kind of lays there. And I'm like, oh, dude, this is
right.
Like, why? I mean, this is, I mean, first of all, just flatly unacceptable from a championship fighter in a championship fight in round fucking 2, especially after there's basically no damage in either way in round number 1. Unacceptable from them to do that.
You know, the third round, we were kind of discussing this before we were jumping on. It's like the third round becomes like the big round in my mind, because that fight, like the way that it was,
scorecards,
there we go. Yeah, and you can see obviously like What do we got? So Sean's actually winning on all scorecards going into the championship rounds, which is
Yeah, which I
mean,
don't
pretty.
I don't agree with.
So again, so this is where we went off course because when I was watching it, especially the first time through, there was a weird kind of phenomena that was almost it reminded me a lot of the Evelev versus Lerone Murphy fight, where you're watching a guy. The third round, so you have this sense of pending, right? Where Chimaev, what are you doing? When are you going to shoot for a takedown? When is this coming? Never shows up in this round. But because that optic or because that preconceived idea is there, it's strange that you think, well, we're now playing then in Strickland's world. This is an obvious Strickland round. But if you really watch it, Chimaev is landing, within the exchanges, at least on the first watch. I'll get your impression on this too. But look, it looked to me like if you get rid of all of that, that Chimaev's holding his own and maybe even doing the better damage in that round, like where he's fighting the stand-up. But it had that trick to it, right? Because you're thinking, if it's standing, that we're playing Strickland's game. And sometimes, like, when people are watching something like that, it can be confusing when a guy, like, I thought Chimaev actually held his own on the feet in that round. And maybe, that's why it was so close. I don't have any problem with if you saw it for Strickland, but at the same time, just because it wasn't a wrestling match in the third round, I didn't think that it was like Strickland's round by default, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yes, I also didn't agree it was his by default. So your score was what, 1-3-4 for Chimaev?
Yeah, I had Chimaev 1, 3, and 4. Yep, correct.
Yeah, I had it that way as well. I think you can have it 2-3-5 Strickland. I think that one makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I watched it again, like I said this morning, and that you're like, all right, well, that third round is close, so you could give that to Strickland. So that's kind of how it went.
The third round is tough because I saw Sean Sheehan talking about it. He's right. Like, you come out of round 2 where Khamzat looks like, it's almost like a minor miracle he made it to the end of the round in certain ways. And then Strickland starts hot in round 3. His jab is cooking the whole time, and numerically, he lands more in round 3. It's a big part of the argument for him. Again, those are quantitative, not qualitative totals, but he certainly unmistakably was landing more. And so a call for him in this round is really not a big deal at all. It's just, to me, if you watch the fight, I thought Chimaev's punching was harder. And the fact that it shattered the nose after round 3, man, that was the round where Strickland goes back to his corner after the end of the round, and his face looked like Frank Mir after getting done up by Brock Lesnar. We got a picture here after the fight.
That was bad.
This is after the fight. This is not after the round. But yeah, dude, I mean, he got, again, and Chimaev's face is a shit show too. It's not like it's one way or the other, but to just kind of illustrate. So to me, like, is the argument good for Strickland in round 3? Yes, it's really not a bad argument at all. It's just that, to me, I don't think that the Chimaev argument is any worse. And in fact, I thought that the damage, which was supposed to be like the preeminent judgment there, I thought the damage was a little bit better with Chimaev, but clearly it's debatable. This is not in any way, shape, or form any kind of robbery. Sean won it fair and square within the rules. That's just how the way it goes.